which is a coalition of 17 neighborhood, business, and nonprofit organizations working together to promote positive solutions to Portland's homeless crisis. We're being hosted today by the District 4 Coalition, made up of neighborhood associations. A big thanks goes out to Carl Hines, Diane O'Day, and Darlene Urban Garrett, who were so helpful in making this forum happen today. So why are we doing this forum? Portlanders consistently describe homelessness as the #1 problem facing the city and county. Hundreds of millions of Portland and county taxpayer funds are spent each year to address this humanitarian quality of life crisis. But many Portlanders are not aware that it is the Multnomah County Commission, not Portland City Council, which controls much of the policy and purse strings. The purpose of the candidate forum is to shine a bright light on homelessness and hear the 4 candidates take on what their take is on this issue. With the presidential race and City of Portland's new form of government getting the primary attention for the November 5th election, these 2 races, which we believe will have a great impact on our city and county, have been virtually invisible. We are doing this as an informational session and are not endorsing candidates. Today's forum is being recorded and live streamed on KOIN site. Now it's my distinct pleasure to welcome our moderator for today's forum, KOIN TV's Political Director Ken Boddie, who also hosts the acclaimed show Eye on Northwest Politics. Ken will introduce the candidates and moderate today's forum. Thank you, Ken, for being here, and all the candidates as well.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be a moderator for this forum. I look forward to a great discussion among our candidates. First of all, let me introduce the candidates, starting with Meghan Moyer. She's a candidate for District 1. A native Oregonian, Meghan Moyer has had a career both in public policy and a contractor who built affordable housing. She currently serves as Director of Public Policy for Disability Rights Oregon. Welcome, Meghan Moyer. We have Vadim Mozyrsky, also a candidate for District 1. Vadim Mozyrsky immigrated with his family from Ukraine at age 7. He's an administrative law judge for the Social Security Administration and serves as president of the Goose Hollow Foothills League. Thank you, Vadim, for being part of this forum.
Thank you. Yeah.
Now let's go to the candidates for District 2. Sam Adams was born and raised in the Oregon coast, on the Oregon coast. He was chief of staff to Portland Mayor Vera Katz, served 1 term as mayor of Portland, and was executive director of the City Club of Portland as well. Thanks for being here, Mr. Adams.
Thanks for having me.
And Shannon Singleton, also a candidate for District 2. Shannon Singleton holds a master's degree in social work. She served as director of equity and social justice under Oregon Governor Kate Brown, and as interim director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services under Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafuri. Welcome, Shannon Singleton, to this forum. Let's talk about the rules. Each candidate will start with a 1-minute opening statement. We'll do the opening statements in alphabetical order. I have a timer in front of me, and if you're looking at the panel above, I will raise my hand when you've got about 10 seconds left to go on your statement. I'll let you finish your sentences. I will not cut you off mid-sentence, but I will cut you off at a little over a minute so you can complete your thought when we get to that point. Then we will have 2 minutes to answer each question after the opening statements. We have 9 questions that we hope to get to during this forum. And then at the end, we'll have a 1-minute closing statement in reverse order of the opening statements. Does everyone understand how we're doing this? All right, very good. Well, let's get into the questions. Question number 1. Portlanders are up in arms about homelessness and they rate it as the city's #1 problem. Each of you has stated your commitment to ending unsheltered homelessness, but the measures of success used by the county focus on services provided, not in reducing and ultimately ending the numbers of unsheltered in Portland. How would you hold the county accountable for clear targets for reducing sheltered homelessness? Now, that is the first question. And I did say that I would give you, I'll let you think about that, but I'll give you your minute for opening statements right now. And we'll start with opening statements, again, in alphabetical order. Sam Adams, 1 minute.
Thank you, everybody, for joining this forum, and for those that put it on, and for you, Ken, for moderating. I'm running for Multnomah County District Number 2 because, especially on the issue of homelessness, the county lacks focus, it lacks urgency, it lacks good partnershiping, and it lacks accountability. We are spending between Home Forward, between the city of Portland and Multnomah County, upwards of $700 million for homelessness, mental illness, for substance abuse disorder, and for affordable housing. And yet we're not getting near enough the value from that massive amount of money. And so I'm running to functionally end homelessness, that there's no more people coming into homelessness that are exiting it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Our next opening statement comes from Shannon Singleton.
Thank you. So I'm running for Multnomah County for District 2 because the county is the largest social service agency in the entire state of Oregon. And I'm a trained social worker with over 30 years of experience on the front lines of the top issues that the county seeks to address. Not just homelessness, but also our healthcare, both physical health and behavioral health care, as well as looking at our role in safe communities. So I'm really looking to jumpstart that transition and that transformation that's long needed at the county, and move forward from the politics of old that we've been stuck in, where people are pointing fingers at each other instead of stepping forward in collaborative leadership to move solutions for the communities that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much as well. Our next opening statement comes from Meghan Moyer.
Hi, I'm Meghan Moyer, and I'm running for Multnomah County Commission in District 1 because I love Portland and Multnomah County. It has been such a wonderful place for me and my family, but we are experiencing a crisis right now, and I felt called to run because I was not seeing the county successfully address some of the significant barriers to our chronically homeless being able to be successfully housed, and that is the unmet mental health and addiction needs. We fundamentally have a broken system, and I have spent years becoming an expert at Medicaid, and I want to use that experience to build a functional system that can serve people when they're ready to be served in the way they need to be served, on demand.
Thank you very much. And our final opening statement comes from Vadim Mozyrsky.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody, for watching this program. My name is Vadim Mozyrsky, and I'm running to be your next Multnomah County Commissioner for District 1 because our county is at an inflection point. There's a lot of positive things on the horizon. We have Music Portland providing free concerts downtown. Foo Fighters and Green Day brought 30,000 people to Goose Hollow. The Arts District in Old Town is evolving, and we're going to have a new PSU or Keller Auditorium in the OMSI area will be revitalized. On the other hand, we're going through tremendous difficulties, one crisis after another: housing emergency, homelessness crisis, crime, methamphetamine and fentanyl crisis. As your next county commissioner, I pledge, as a former senior policy advisor, as a judge for Social Security, as a community leader, to stop the chaos of crises and bring a period of pragmatic calm to local politics by running a more efficient and honest government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll get into the questions. I jumped ahead a little bit and gave you the first question, but I'll repeat it as we get the answers from you. You'll have 2 minutes to answer. Portlanders obviously up in arms about the homeless crisis. They rate it as the city's #1 problem. Now, each of you has stated your commitment to ending unsheltered homelessness, but the measures of success used by the county focus on services provided, not in reducing and ultimately ending the numbers of unsheltered in Portland. How would you hold the county accountable for clear targets for reducing unsheltered homelessness? And we'll start with Meghan Moyer, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental problems we've had is how we measure success. And I totally agree with the concern that services delivered are not necessarily a measure of success. One of the things that I'm proposing is to have the Joint Office of Homeless Services adopt a criteria that we are holding ourselves accountable to that measures success at increments. Because I don't think success is getting somebody into a shelter for one night. I think that that's a first step. I think it's an important first step. But we also need to ask ourselves, are we then moving them closer to a more stable setting? And so I want this county and the city to start measuring success by, did we engage somebody in services? Where were they in 6 months? Where were they in 12 months? And where were they in 24 months? Because ultimately, we need to set our goal that within 24 months, somebody is in a long-term, permanent setting in which they will be successful. And I think that's incredibly important for being able to then create unique strategies by different types of populations. What's right for a family experiencing an economic crisis is a different path to success than a person who has been chronically homeless, who has a severe mental illness, and will have a very different path to what is their best permanent outcome. And I think one of the issues is not differentiating strategies and being able to really look at somebody's situation and finding the path for success for them. I think we've gone too broad, and it's time now to be able to get more specific in a strategy.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that answer. We will go to Mr. Mozyrsky next.
So obviously, we've been heading in the wrong direction. In 7 years, the Joint Office of Homeless Services went from a budget of $45 million to $400 million. During that time, homelessness actually increased by 50%. Deaths on the street have increased by 400%. Overdoses on the street have increased by 500%. And murders on the street went from 4 in 2017 to 2022, 26, 650% in the course of 5 years. What we need to do is make sure that we understand where all this money is going, because it's not going to solve the problems that we have. And so I'm calling for a forensic and a performance audit of the Joint Office of Homeless Services, so we know who's getting funded, what they're doing, and what the successes are, and make sure we fund the success and not fund the failures. I've already sent a letter with over 100 signatures to the chair of the county commission asking for exactly that. The Eco Northwest is doing an external audit for that very same reason. We know our money is being misspent, but it'll take them 3 years because our county commission is not working with them to open the books. We need to make sure our county commission does that, because once we understand what's working, what's not, we can better fund the services that are working and make sure we have the metrics in place, which is getting people off the streets and into services and not leaving them to die on the streets.
Thank you, Mr. Mozyrsky. Mr. Adams.
So again, I think we need a North Star. I think the ideas of audit, the idea of segmentation to achieve an overall goal makes sense, but we need an overall goal. And again, I believe our overall goal needs a functional end to homelessness, which means that we're not seeing any additional homelessness on occurring than people are leaving homelessness, and that homelessness is rare and brief. This is a high standard, but given the massive amount of money that taxpayers are paying, it's a standard that I think is worthy of the goal and worthy of the amount of money that is going into this goal. I would add to this the notion that we have one care system, so that people experiencing houselessness don't have to go from 4 to 6, sign up for 4 to 6 different sort of care tracking systems, that we have an annual report for the joint amount of money, and that the $700 million be budgeted in a unified fashion. We appoint a homelessness czar to pull this all together, and that it includes a independent audit of joint efforts. How close are we getting to the functional end of homelessness? How are we doing in terms of the segmented markets? And where exactly is the money going that would come from forensic audit that needs to be pulled together under one person in an emergency basis? This is a human disaster, human emergency. We need to start treating it like one, not have 27 people across 4 or more jurisdictions deciding different things for the same problem. It's a waste of money, a waste of human lives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. And on this question, Ms. Singleton.
Thank you. So when it comes to ending unsheltered homelessness and addressing the accountability, I think there's a couple of pieces that we need to keep in mind. One of those is we need to continue to increase shelter capacity. I do think we should be utilizing our data and recent studies showing us that we have better housing placement outcomes out of alternative shelters, including hotels and motels and our tiny villages or our safe rest sites like Right to Dream 2. What we don't always do a good job of is making sure that we have housing placement, behavioral as well as physical health services connected to those. So everybody who is in that shelter site should be getting those services and supports. Additionally, we need to reevaluate what congregate shelter means in our system. We're just not seeing housing placement outcomes from those programs at the level that we'd like to. And so we need to have a real conversation of if we want to continue to fund those sites or if we want to fund them differently to just be a safety off the streets intervention. Additionally, we absolutely must address the eviction issue in our community. A study last week by Portland State showed that some of our highest evictors are affordable housing developers, and we have got to work with them to close that gap and make sure that we're not continuing to churn people back out into homelessness. Once somebody resolves their homelessness and they're safe inside, we got to keep them there. Not only is it better for them and reduces trauma, but it's cheaper for us as taxpayers. And then lastly, I would add that we can't just focus on shelter. We've got to close the gaps in our jail system. It is a revolving door where people go in and out of jail and back to the streets. We have got to connect to them. They're touching the county. We should bring services to them while they're touching the county. And there's gaps throughout our system that are those types of things that I would like to see us close. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to question number 2. Cities across the country, especially in the West, have complained bitterly about a federal court decision restricting a city's ability to eliminate unsheltered camping. The U.S. Supreme Court recently struck down this decision, but Oregon is still restricted by House Bill 3115, enacted in 2021. That directs that public camping can only be outlawed when adequate shelter space is available or when camping violates, quote, reasonable restrictions. Do you support modifying or revoking HB 3115? And if so, how? We'll start with this question with Mr. Mozyrsky.
Yes, I support modifying House Bill 3115 in order to get us on the same page with surrounding states like Washington and California. I actually came across an interesting quote today that I'll read to you directly. This is from Mayor Breed in San Francisco. They're actually enforcing laws in accordance with the Supreme Court standards that have overturned the Grants Pass decision, which bound our abilities to address camping on the streets, especially campers that people who refuse to go to shelters. This is what Mayor Breed said. We are going to be very aggressive and assertive in moving encampments, which may even include criminal penalties. The problem is not going to be solved by building more housing, Breed added. Thank goodness for the Supreme Court decision. So our House Bill 3115 is based on that old Ninth Circuit decision that was overturned by the Supreme Court. I'm very curious to hear what my opponent says about that, but I personally think that we need to be on the same page with surrounding states and enforcing our laws. What our mayor often says is 75 to 80% of the people that are approached with offers to go to safe rest villages, to the TAS camp, small village sites, to congregate shelters, to motel rooms, 75 to 80% says, no, I will not go. And they get swept as they nowadays do, only to be returned back again. By enforcing these laws, by allowing us to have the flexibility to get people into shelters, into services, a carrot and stick approach, we will offer all the services, but you have to accept them. That's how they will benefit. That's how they will go through detox and mental health and housing services, but also our community as a whole will benefit. So I'm for changing House Bill 3115 because the fear is if other states are not adherent to that, we'll have more people coming here because we have more lax standards.
Mr. Adams, same question.
Yeah, I support local control. I support these are local issues, and I believe that local voters should have the right to do initiative petitions, that local voters should be able to elect people to office to make these decisions and then hold them accountable. And right now, this preempts too much local control. For the reasons that Vadim talked about, yeah, I support revoking it and holding local decision makers accountable for their decisions on issues related to managing of camping and assisting people that are experiencing outdoor houselessness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Next, we'll go to Shannon Singleton.
Thank you, Ken. So with House Bill 3115, I really think we should watch how this progresses and see what we learn about what the new ordinance and how the City of Portland ordinance plays out with HB 3115. I'm frankly tired of politicians rushing to remove something before it's actually implemented. Let's implement this law, see what we learn about our systems, and see what works. I'd also like to just add that the idea that when you have services that people come is something that I've heard across the nation in my work. I've worked in homelessness in Philadelphia, in New Mexico, in California, and this idea comes up consistently, and it doesn't ever bear to be true. It is data that we ask people in this community of where they most recently slept, where they came from before they became homeless, and the majority of our folks in the street count continue to be from the community, at a minimum from the region. So I think it's really important that as leaders in the community, we're being very honest and using the data and the information we have to make sure that we're telling the true narrative of what's happening in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Meghan Moyer.
Yeah, I certainly don't look at this Supreme Court as my guiding moral compass, and I totally disagreed with their decision. And frankly, I think the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals Martin v. Boise decision was the right balance. Yes, there are reasonable restrictions related to where somebody should be able to camp. That is something that I think is fair, but there has to be real alternatives for somebody to go. That is what that court case determined. And, I really feel that this is one of those issues where we're looking at options to pass difficult situations on to other communities. And I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in fixing this problem for members of our community who are in crisis. So, it is a nuanced response. I think it is appropriate to have daytime camping bans in particular areas, particularly in areas like storefronts. But I also think that people have to have a place to go. And there are rational reasons why somebody would say no to a congregate setting somewhere. And honestly, we need to be real about, is it appropriate to mix certain communities? And so for me, I am very, very focused on long-term solutions to getting people the housing and the supports they need to leave the streets permanently. I am not interested in short-term failed past policy of jailing people where 80% of the people who were in the point in time study in 2022 identified themselves as somebody with a chronic disability, 80%. And we have no services available. So I really want to tackle this issue with real solutions and now not cop out ineffective past policies.
Thank you very much. We know the devil is in the details to solve homelessness, addiction, mental health, and housing shelter challenges. Can you describe how you would help fix our current broken delivery system? And do you agree it's broken? We'll start with Mr. Adams.
Yeah, $700 million spread across local decision makers at Home Ford, City of Portland, and Multnomah County. And it's a mess. There's no plan. There's no, as you pointed out in your earlier question, there's no measure of success. There are measure of outcomes, outputs, but not outcomes. So again, treat this like the humanitarian emergency that it is. Have the city home forward, cities home forward, and the county appoint the same emergency incident commander, just like other emergencies, so that that person is vested by those organizations to align and realign and dig into that $700 million, looking for savings that can plug the holes that exist in the system. We can't assume that someone will ride in on a white horse with a whole wagon load for money, new money to fix this. We've got to do better with the ample resources that we already have. And I've talked about some of the other areas. I mean, we're talking about a deflection center, sobering center, and then what's after that? Well, $700 million is a pool of money we can dig into. On the issue of, if I could just comment on the sort of past dialogue, there's an aspect of this. I mean, Portland has 80% of the Tri-County homeless population. We're about 44% of the Tri-County population. Tri-County homeless population is about 80%. We're about 44%. So we are attracting, whatever they say on the survey, if I was houseless and a stranger approached me and said, "Where are you from?" I'm going to probably tell you I'm from Portland, and might do so legitimately, thinking, I remember when Vera Katz was mayor, a high percentage of folks in Washington County thought she was their mayor. So I wouldn't put a lot of credence into.
I have to, Mr. Adams, I have to end it right there. But we definitely understand your point that the city of Portland is bearing the brunt of the homelessness issue. Let's go to Shannon Singleton for that same question.
Thank you. So yes, I do think the delivery system is broken in a couple of different places. How we currently fund homeless services is, if you come to my shelter, you get a caseworker with me. If you leave my shelter, you don't keep that caseworker. I would like to see us shift that model where the worker actually follows the person. So if that person is in shelter, on the streets, in jail, in a hospital, in a treatment center for addiction, that their worker is still connected with them and following them through the system to help them get them back into housing. We have people starting over multiple times just to try and resolve their own homelessness, and that is clearly not effective. Additionally, I think we have far too many office-based services. We've got to get mobile. We've got to fund providers to get up out the door and go meet people out in the community where they're at. Again, whether they're in shelter or not. I've started a number of innovative programs in this community, including the InReach team that was designed to go into shelters that didn't have housing placement services and provide those services. They've been extremely effective, in addition to working with day centers to do the same. I started the mobile permanent supportive housing team that has housing retention rates of 98%, which is unheard of in this community and unheard of in what we see in data nationally. That is something that we should be expanding and replicating. And we just keep funding a little bit everywhere as opposed to focusing on the things that we're seeing are really effective. And I would like to shift that the way that we approach that work.
Thank you very much, Ms. Singleton. Meghan Moyer.
This is the issue that really drove me to run for office, because I am passionate about finally fixing our broken behavioral health system. This is a problem 50 years in the making. When the federal government moved toward deinstitutionalization, they never helped in any significant way fund states' community-based behavioral health. And in fact, Oregon was offered $30 million, and we had a governor who turned it down because he didn't want us to be long-term committed to serving that population. And this is the result of that decision. We do not have an actual functioning system. We have services and we have coordinated care organizations who deliver the Oregon Health Plan. But there is not a systematic case management and eligibility system. And I totally agree with Ms. Singleton related to the case management needs to stick with the person, not the location. We don't help people identify need and connect them to services. In fact, you could do an assessment of somebody, and most likely that service either does not exist in our community or it has a wait list of weeks to months. This is a huge problem. You know, I think people want to talk about a sobering center. They want to talk about detox. They want to talk about crisis de-escalation. Absolutely, we need those. But until it is integrated into a functional system with case management and it is backed by Medicaid, all of those will be minimally effective because people can't then move to that next thing. You know, we are having people detox and not then be able to get into treatment. That is dangerous. So we can do better. We have to build a functioning system.
Thank you very much. And last on this question, Mr. Mozyrsky.
Yeah, so my opponent did a decent job at identifying the problems. Well, here's the solutions. The solution is we need to implement a by names list so we actually know who is on the street and what kind of services we need to deliver to them. Let no one say we need more money and more services. We have plenty of money out there. We're just not connecting the people living on our streets in the tents who are often moving around to those very services. And part of that is Built for Zero, a program that's worked in other places in the country, a program that our county says that they will implement, but they've taken years and still not. So we need to make sure we have a by names list where every time someone works with a provider, we know what kind of services they've received, we know what's working, what's not, what their needs are, where they came from. And I do want to echo Sam Adams here. The 2002 point in time count says that about 34% of the people that have lived on the streets over 2 years were already homeless before they came to Portland, to Multnomah County. In the last 2 years, this was 2022, so since the pandemic, 69% were homeless before they came to Multnomah County. So we saw an increase during the pandemic, and we have not wrapped our minds around the policies to make sure we address that influx. We need to coordinate with the service providers. Right now, the Joint Office of Homeless Services is great at pushing money out the door. 400 million, 300 million in other organizations, but nonetheless, we don't have coordination between the service providers. Houston coordinated and they made a huge dent in their homeless population. They get together all the nonprofits, made sure we had a continuum of care rather than everybody being siloed. We are still siloed. The people that are here together that work with all these organizations will admit to that because they've actually flown the person from Houston that organized for the government of Houston to make that happen. But guess what? Our county is not picking up the ball and running with it in that respect. We need to get sure people working together so we get people off the streets, into shelters, into housing.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question. As more affordable housing is built, how would you also approach workforce training and employment needs for those transitioning out of homelessness and addiction and mental health treatment? There's an example of the Broadway corridor, planning at least 230 affordable units. Where do these individuals get jobs or mental health treatment once they get the housing? And we'll start this with Shannon Singleton.
Thank you, Ken. So when it comes to workforce training, this is something that I am a big proponent of. The county currently puts dollars into workforce development, but it is completely disconnected from our homelessness and our anti-poverty systems. So I would really like to see that connection happen so that we might be subsidizing somebody's rent for a couple of years while they're able to move through training, whether that's one of the family wage union jobs and going through those apprenticeship programs, or it's working with our providers, like Work Systems Inc., to get training for a different type of job so they can actually move out of poverty. This has been a disconnect that I've seen for quite some time, and I continue to ask for us to make that connection in the county. I think you'll see in the Burnside Bridge program that some of the workforce development investments there will be going explicitly to try and make this connection between anti-poverty programs and workforce development. I think we have a great opportunity with the infrastructure projects in this region to really get a number of people trained and into that workforce pathway that they can be working on Interstate Bridge, Rose Quarter, Broadway Corridor. We've got the Burnside Bridge as well. So we have a lot of opportunity here to leverage investments that will be coming from these types of programs, these types of projects to help people move into these family wage jobs.
Meghan Moyer.
Yeah, I think we have some really significant barriers to people being able to find employment, particularly those who have experienced homelessness, may have been incarcerated, but particularly people with disabilities. There are several reasons I think that we have really struggled to employ people with disabilities, some of which are frankly some disincentives and federal benefits around how much somebody can work before they lose things like their Social Security, and for many of the clients that Disability Rights Oregon sees, it's not just Social Security they're worried about losing, but it's also their health care through the Oregon Health Plan. You know, certainly we need to continue to support reform efforts at the national level to not disincentivize work for people with disabilities, but also I think the way that we run vocational rehabilitation, which is a state service that is supposed to help people with disabilities become employed, is way too office-based, not at all connected with the other services that people are receiving, and frankly, I don't think has a very good track record. You know, I've been involved in issues related to trying to get vocational rehabilitation services to better serve people with developmental disabilities for years, because they used to purposely move them toward sheltered workshops, which were something that paid sub-minimum wage. People with disabilities are grossly underemployed, not just in Oregon, not just in our region, but nationally. And it is a totally missed employment opportunity. I think it is the role of the county to really be proactive in employment services and make sure that when we are contracting with people, we promote hiring people with disabilities.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mozyrsky.
So I'm a big proponent in vocational rehab. I think we need to make sure people are trained in order to meet their accommodations, meet their needs, and find the kind of jobs that they're able to perform. One model that I really like is Bybee Lakes. You may recall former chair Deborah Kafoury was against Bybee Lakes being used as a shelter. Well, guess what? Bybee Lakes is very successful. 88% success rate in getting people off the streets, off of drugs, into housing, and into jobs. How do they do that? Well, when it's good habits. When people go to Bybee Lakes, not only do they get drug addiction treatment, but they also are linked with jobs in the community over there, the Amazon warehouses, those sort of places, and they learn those good habits. So whereas my opponent might say, well, they shouldn't have jobs because maybe they'll lose Social Security benefits. Well, I'm a Social Security judge. I know the importance of actually having a job. It gives you an identity. It gives you a purpose. It gives you a reason to wake up in the morning and have something to do. And for a lot of people, jobs, they benefit tremendously because they can get promoted. They build up. Yeah, the initial job might not be a lot of money, but down the road, they can benefit, save money, pay for their rent, have families, get their children to school. That's because of jobs. So let no one say that there should be an excuse for people getting a jobs. Now, vocational rehab, I've seen that work time and time again. The Bybee Lakes program, where people get trained. All we need to do is get individuals off the streets into stability, shelters, safe rest villages, and have the training occur there, not expecting the training to occur in 6,500 tents and 65 street corners around the city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mozyrsky. And just want to point out for our audience that Mr. Mozyrsky referred to his opponent a couple of times. This is in District 1. Mr. Mozyrsky and Meghan Moyer are running for the District 1 position. Mr. Adams and Shannon Singleton are running in District 2. Let's go to our next question. What are your biggest... Pardon me?
Answer? Did I answer?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Adams. I jumped ahead. Yeah, please do answer that question.
Vadim took a lot of the wind out of my sails. I agree with him in terms of the success that Bobby Lakes is showing. I would add another local best practices, the job training, placement, mentoring, shadowing, that program that also occurs at Central City Concern. I think both show some amazing outcomes. Part of the vision for the temporary alternative shelter sites is also, though, to, in addition to those great programs, and there are a few others out there, and they need the resources that we can get from the $700 million to grow and expand that to other sites. But in addition to that is, as part of the TAS vision, that has been, they've been working on this through the Work Systems Inc., based on a best practice out of the United Kingdom, is to offer more meaningful, even if you are in a TAS site, even if you are experiencing outdoor houselessness in a TAS site, that we can provide more meaningful day labor or week-long labor opportunities than simply picking up trash. And that's going to begin to roll out as the TAS sites get up to about 3 of them established, as a way to give, again, as Vadim said, that sense of purpose and connection to other folks. We know from the studies that the insularity and the loneliness that many people experiencing outdoor houselessness can feel contributes to other sort of mental health issues, substance abuse disorders. So even folks that are experiencing those kinds of maladies can still do more meaningful work than simply picking up trash along the road or around homeless encampments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. And I did give you an extra 10 seconds because I almost skipped over you. So
that's all right.
Thank you very much. Question number 5. What are your biggest concerns about the structure of the Multnomah County Commission and the role of the chair? There's been a lot of discussion about that as Multnomah County has tried to get some things done. And we'll start with Meghan Moyer.
Yeah, I have serious concerns about the way that Multnomah County has been operating for the last 40 years. And I do support reform. First of all, I think it's really important that we have an appropriate separation between the executive role of the chair and the legislative role of the commission. Yes, the chair sits and is a voting member of the commission, but should not be the presiding officer of that commission. And I think that has really limited the dialogue and the open, transparent debate over policy. So I do support a reform to the way that the county is operating in order to allow for commissioners to bring issues to the agenda and to not have them be removed. And I think that will benefit the county in many ways. One, I am hoping that it allows for a lot more open discussion and a lot more public input. I fear that we have been having a pattern of decisions being presented to commissioners and the board 48 hours in advance, and they seem to be the fully baked idea that nobody has seen, has not engaged in public input, and gives very limited opportunity for a commissioner to come up with an amendment or an alternative proposal, or even have the ability to consult with people in the community about their view of the proposal. So I am hoping that is one thing that can change. I would like more public input before it seems like the final product is up for a vote. But I also really think some of the budget issues need to be addressed, and we need to measure the success of the programs the county is funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mozyrsky.
Hats off to Sam Adams. He went to a law firm and got an opinion about the illegality of the county chair keeping things out of the agenda, which is basically a veto power, not only on the other county commissioners, but on the 100,000 plus people that elected them into office. So with that opinion, and we need the county attorney make sure to enforce that. We need to make sure we change this super secret executive rule that allows the county chair to keep things off the agenda that she disagrees with. But that's the very beginning. The bigger picture is there's a lot of secrecy that's going on at the county commission that we need to make sure that we shed some light on and make sure there's transparency. We talk a lot about in the city and county about elevating voices, but I'm seeing time and time again secrecy at our county commission. So when you're talking about the deflection center in the Buckman neighborhood, when you look to see how it was implemented, first the lease was signed. Then they informed the neighborhood association people that there was going to be a deflection center there. Then they informed the commissioner, Sharon Moyer, for whose seat I'm running for, that would happen there. That's backwards. We need to inform the community first, make sure that the representative for that community is informed, and then make the decision-making process. Why do it in secrecy? All the meetings about the deflection center in secrecy. The local public safety coordinating council, which works with the judges, the DA, the sheriff, the police chief to implement long-term policies, now has an executive committee where the agenda is set in secrecy. Let's elevate voices. Let's be true about grassroots advocacy here and let the community have input on the budget and other things where right now they're being shut out.
Mr. Adams, same question.
Yeah, when I first heard of this issue that the current chair was vetoing Commissioner Sharon Myron's resolution in February of this year to put for discussion a resolution about ambulance response times. I've been around long enough to know that wasn't legal under at least Oregon law. And when I went to look at the board rules, which were easily could look up on the county's website, it was really clear that any elected could put an item, any single elected person could put an item on the agenda. And that needs to happen. Direct answer to your question is it's in bad shape. Local democracy at the county is in bad shape. When you have budgets of $4 billion being provided, budget documents provided hours the day before they're expected to board members that they're expected to vote on it, that just shows the level of dysfunction and lack of consultation that is going on. On one hand, on the other hand, things come to the board and others who are able to watch these things closely, and certainly I've had questions about it, things come to the board and they have like an automatic 3 votes. So it's like from one extreme to the other extreme, and this kind of thing no one would put up with on the city of Portland side, and I don't think the other cities in Multnomah County, we shouldn't put it up with the county either. The chair needs to follow the rules. The chair needs to follow local laws.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Shannon Singleton.
Thank you. I think that you've heard a lot about the rule around the chair and the agenda. And I agree, we should be able to have open dialogue. That's what the county commission meetings are for. Additionally, I think the piece around transparency is important to highlight. Not only did that happen with the deflection center, but also with AMR, and something we never heard about in the AMR case was what the frontline staff of those ambulances actually want and need as a part of that deal. And that's something I think we cannot continue to do. We must hear from the people who are impacted and understand what their take is as part of us being able to make informed decisions as county commissioners. Additionally, when you think about kind of the bigger question you asked about the structure of Multnomah County, I really am looking forward to the new role in oversight and looking at kind of what is happening within the jails. That is a new power that the county commissioners will have as a result of the recent charter reform. And that is something I think is long overdue and much needed. And so that's a piece that I'm excited to see how we implement that, and if we need to make additional adjustments, that we have that conversation early.
Thank you very much. Sounds like all four of you are basically in agreement that the structure should change, or the way the county operates and makes decisions should change. Thank you very much. Number 6, with the city of Portland's ban on camping and the recriminalization of drugs under House Bill 4002, how do you see the city and the county working together to ensure compliance with these changes in policy, including enforcement measures? We have seen that the county's been struggling to get both the deflection center and the sobering center effectively launched with the needed services on site. That was addressed in one of our previous questions. But how do you see the city and the county working together to ensure compliance with the changes that were instituted in HB 4002? And we'll start with Mr. Mozyrsky.
Well, I mean, the first step is electing county commissioners that actually believe in enforcing the laws as passed by city council, and that are supported by people who are living in Portland, Multnomah County. It's unfortunate to hear from my opponent that she would not want to enforce the camping law, which is, we're trying to enforce here in Portland, and is certainly being enforced in California and other places around the country to good results. San Francisco seeing a decrease in homelessness while they're enforcing kind of similar laws that we're trying to enforce here. So we have to live as an example, which is if there's laws, we can change them, but we shouldn't be saying we don't want to enforce them because of morals or otherwise. We shouldn't elevate ourselves above the people that pass those laws. Now, within LIPSIC, the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, we have the judges, we have the DA, we have the county chair, we have a representative from the city, we have the police, the sheriff. That's where we need to focus and making sure everyone's on the same page. And that hasn't happened in recent history, but that's where we need to work, because when we see people with 50 pounds of fentanyl being released back on the streets, that's not necessarily a DA or public defender. That's a judicial problem as well. The standards that they set, that's a sheriff's problem as well, jail policies. So we need to make sure people are on the same page. And so I will be at those meetings talking about what the policies are. As a judge, as a lawyer, I can make the policies that actually work for us and work for people living on our streets.
Thank you very much. And since Mr. Mozyrsky addressed Ms. Moyer's points directly, I'm going to have Meghan Moyer go next. We're going to go slightly out of the order that we've been going.
Yeah, I don't think that was an accurate description of my view. I think there's a huge difference between arresting somebody because you ban all camping everywhere, which is not what the Portland statute says, versus a daytime camping ban that is, people are asked to leave, they can get up and go, they're given alternatives. I would like to see some additional alternatives placed. I have long supported and believe we desperately need a drop-off center for people either to sober, or a crisis de-escalation center for people experiencing mental illness who may not fully understand what's going on at that moment. Would I prefer dropping them off there to jailing them? Yeah, I would prefer that. If somebody is refusing to move, they physically can move, it is a daytime camping ban, and they choose not to get up and leave, I think it is okay to enforce that. This is about a nuanced approach. I think we have to be clear that there are competing interests, and we have to make decisions that make sense. But I'm also going to be very real that when you arrest somebody who has a substance use disorder or is experiencing severe mental illness and they go into the jail population, that creates unique risk for them and the people around them and the staff. And frankly, we're in a crisis in our jail right now. We have had such a horrible amount of turnover with our medical staff and others that I am very nervous about what happens when you increase the jail population with people with sometimes severe behavioral support needs. This could cause really serious issues. People do die in jail. They die in Multnomah County Jail. And I think we got to be real about the risks that we're taking on by jailing this population versus choosing an alternative route. I'm not a never, but I really feel like let's be balanced in our approach.
Thank you very much. Mr. Adams.
So, depending on what the count is, a couple of dozen temporary alternative shelter sites would provide enough shelter for the majority of folks experiencing houselessness, right? Outdoor houselessness right now. So let's keep this in perspective. What doesn't work is what we have now in the city of Portland, which is only based on manner, which is just another version in terms of time, place, and manner, which is just another version of camp where you want. As long as you have a tidy tent or a tidy RV, you're going to be able to camp pretty much where you want. And I think we can do better than that. We need to bring more task sites on into the system. This was opposed bitterly by the county originally. They didn't want to pay for them. Now they've taken them on. That's a good step. I'm glad to hear that. But we also need the full complement of not just manner, but time and place. The county is 466 square miles. We have to curate people into smaller groups. We will never have enough money. When I got back into the city, we had 800 camps around 100, in that case, just 146 square miles scattered across the city of Portland. We would have never been able to find enough money for enough outreach workers to make meaningful connections to those camps. We need to co-locate folks, and we're showing that with the early results of the task sites that were put up by my team and Commissioner Ryan's team with the Safe Rest Villages. They're showing that they can get into permanent housing 3 times the number than the standard county congregate shelters. This is a fixable problem, but we need time, place, and manner across the board.
Thank you very much. And Shannon Singleton.
Thanks, Ken. So I'm going to come back to your question, which was about House Bill 4002 and the city and county being able to work together. And I think we really need to look at it can't just be deflection, right? We're deflecting to what? We have to have that bigger continuum of care for folks. There has to be actual treatment beds so that once somebody, if they are arrested and they are offered deflection, that there's actually the opportunity to do that, and that it isn't just, again, another revolving door where they're interacting with law enforcement and county systems and then right back out on the street. So I think I see opportunities with the new city council and have worked really collaboratively with candidates across districts to look at and really have those conversations of how can we disagree but still treat each other with respect and move things forward so we can find solutions. So I feel really hopeful about the future of the county and the city's ability to work together when we, again, put egos aside and move past, turn the page on these old politics of finger pointing and actually have conversations and collaborate and move solutions forward together. I feel really hopeful about that outcome in the near future.
Thank you very much. And that answer leads to our next question. You all responded on the questionnaire that we sent out about whether or not a merger of the county and the city at some point in the future makes sense. Now, considering the large sums of funding and their uses needing oversight, also the challenges of the two parties working effectively together on common solutions and common problems, can you expand on your yes or no answer? This is about potential or possible merger of the county and the city, especially when they're dealing with similar issues. So, Mr. Adams, we'll start with you and start with telling us what your answer to that questionnaire was.
Yes, to a merger. If not right away, then eventually, and both organizations working to get on literally the same set of systems have these, have the county actually take the lead with an incident commander, a homelessness czar, that has the ability to organize things within county government, and then to also that same person appointed by the city as its cities plural as their houselessness czar. And we don't have to wait for a merger for some of the benefits of what a merger would yield. Having worked on this issue when then Multnomah County Chair Bev Stein and then Portland Mayor Vera Katz proposed a merger. To do this well and to be fair to the staff and to come out of the merger process with more than 1 + 1 = 2, we need to get the state legislature to change some laws. And then there's also consultation with the other cities within the county that at least back then had no interest in merging with a merged city of Portland and Multnomah County, and need to work with them to figure out what their future would be.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. We'll go to Ms. Singleton next and give us what your answer was about whether the merger of the city and the county makes sense, and then you can get into your answer to the overall question.
Yeah, so my answer was I think it's a great idea, and that it's something I think you just heard from Sam hasn't been talked about in quite some time. So I think there needs to be intentionality. The details do matter. So it can't just be a, yes, this is a great idea, let's do it. But how do we actually do it thoughtfully and intentionally?
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Moyer.
Yeah, I'm a no. I'm a no on this one. And largely, one, because I don't know how that is fair to the other cities of Multnomah County, which have their own very unique communities and needs. And I worry that their needs would be really overshadowed if Multnomah County merged with the city. Also, I really think that the constituency is very different and the work is very different. And I think that influences who gets elected and what their priorities are to the county versus the city. You know, the county really, its primary role, it does have other ancillary services, but it delivers human services largely in cooperation and coordination with the state of Oregon. And that is a very specific way that Oregon has chosen to decide to deliver many state-funded services to seniors, people with disability, mental health and addiction, public health. And so the way the county operates and the way that it has a unique relationship with the state is different than the way the city operates and what the priorities of the cities are. If you look at, you know, who's maybe not this group of candidates, but traditionally who's drawn to wanting to run for the city versus those who want to run for the county, I would have no interest in working for the city of Portland. They do incredibly important things, but I have a passion and expertise for delivering human services. I'm drawn to that. I have a lot of expertise in working with the state and our federal partners on how we do that and what our flexibility are. And honestly, I think that that's important to have that at the county. And I think the city's priorities are different, and that's okay. We should have people who have expertise and passion for that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mozyrsky.
I'm a yes. I'm not running to represent the interests of Gresham. I'm running to represent the interests of District 1. And I hear from a lot of people that they want something that works, even if that means merging the city and the county together. What we're seeing right now is a failure at the county on many levels, which is costing our city government hundreds of millions of dollars a year, which is increasing our 911 response times, increasing our firefighter response times, increasing our ambulance response times most recently until they settled that mediation. So we need to make sure that we work. And for me, If it means saving lives, if it means the prosperity of Portland and the greater Multnomah County area, I'd love to put myself out of a job and vote to incorporate the city and the county together so that we can actually work together, plan together better, have a synergy of services, save money, be able to fix those potholes, all those hundreds of millions of dollars that we're spending on Safe Rest Villages, TOS sites because the county's failing us. Let's actually put some sidewalks into neighborhoods. Let's put some roads into gravel areas. And let's fix our city infrastructure. I think that's a wonderful idea if our county is dysfunctional. First, let's make it functional, but if it can't be, I'm all for making it one entity.
Thank you very much. The Housing First strategy often leaves out the wraparound services that residents need, and that means recidivism back to homelessness in a lot of cases. How would you revisit this strategy or change it to be more effective, including having safe places to live? Let's start with Shannon Singleton.
Thank you, Ken. So this one, I just want to say, if Housing First programs are not doing wraparound services, they're not Housing First programs. It is the integral core of that type of service. And so we're not truly doing it if we don't provide those wraparound supports. But listen, what I believe in is what works. I know that the path back into housing for some people goes through shelter. For others, it goes through detox and treatment services. And for others, it goes through a direct placement into housing. I've worked in all of those programs on the front lines, and I've had success with people retaining their housing through all of those models. And I think Meghan maybe mentioned earlier, there's a component of day center that we don't talk about much, but I've also operated and started housing placement services out of a day center as well. We just need to bring those supports to the placement. And again, when we think about retention, it's not even just Housing First placements that that need that retention services. It is our folks who are moving into our affordable housing portfolio. I really implore folks to look at the study at PSU. We have an eviction problem in this community, and we are never going to end homelessness in this community if we continue to see people return back to homelessness over and over again. So we have to really think about, as a county, how are we keeping people inside? Again, I'll say it's cheaper and it helps reduce trauma for folks. So we have got to spend time focused on that component of our system and actually address the changes that are desperately needed there.
Meghan Moyer will be the next one to answer this question.
Yeah, I largely agree with what Shannon just said. You know, I would like to talk about a subgroup that we have struggled to successfully support and gain long-term stability for, and that's people with chronic mental health conditions. And I think one of the issues is that we have a belief that unfortunately is not necessarily accurate, that everybody is, you know, one hospitalization or magic pill away from being able to be a fully functional member of society. And unfortunately, that's not everybody's journey with mental illness. And as people experience mental illness through the course of their lives, especially if they've not been able to access continued services and treatment, their level of long-term ability to be self-sufficient drops per psychosis. And so we now have about 30 to 40% of our severely mentally ill population, even at their stable, aren't able to take care of themselves. And we keep trying to put them in settings that demand a level of being able to navigate services that they're simply not capable of doing. And that is where I have been really passionate about talking about the need to expand long-term services like we do for seniors and people with physical and developmental disabilities to people with chronic persistent mental illness who now have reached a level of disability in which they need a pretty intensive level of support. And I have said, I think we can do this without increasing cost, because we can prevent unnecessary hospitalizations and incarcerations if we keep people treated successful in community.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mozyrsky.
Yeah, the difficulty right now is we're leaving people on the streets with very serious drug addiction, mental illness problems. So we can't even tell right now how many we can help with, as my opponent said, the magic pills. Medications do work for a certain subset of people. Detox works for a certain subset of people. Those people will not need wraparound services, but we're leaving them on the streets to suffer and die while we talk about how we can expand services down the road. Again, my plan is to get individuals off the streets into shelters, triage them, provide them mental health services, drug addiction services. For those that works, then we put them into long-term housing. Once again, we have $400 million plus $300 million at Home Forward, $700 million for about 6,500 people living in the streets. We can house everybody if that was the only problem, if money was the only problem, but the services are a big deal. And we need transitional housing. So I was very discouraged when the county wouldn't join partnership with a private organization that had office space that they were willing to convert to 80 transitional beds. So that when someone has detox, when someone has stabilized with their mental health, they have a place to go that's not the streets. It would have cost the county about $7 million, I think is what they asked them. The county said, no, we need those 80 beds. We need that transitional housing so we can evaluate people and see whether they fit into permanent housing, if they need those wraparound services, if we can stabilize them. And that's what I'll make sure happens.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Adams.
We need a unified approach, and it's got to be unified around that $700 million that is currently being budgeted separately by departments within Home Forward, the city of Portland, other cities, and Multnomah County for these services, for housing services, along with mental health and substance abuse disorder, homeless services. The how should be the new what in this day and age. How are we going to go about and solve these problems? And it's the hard work of putting all the money on the table and figuring out, how do we get more out of it? How do we get more housing out of it? I've got at multicoforsam.com, I've got a detailed, comprehensive, affordable housing plan to do better with the resources that these governments have, a comprehensive homeless plan as well, that I've touched on a little bit in this conversation. But we've got to make a continuum out of these sort of siloed, sorted, scattered parts that are just so frustrating to Portlanders if they don't know all the intricate details. They know intuitively they're paying a lot of money and not getting a lot of results. And the people that are really hurt, of course, the worst are those that are the most vulnerable. The waiting list to get into housing is 5 to 10 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Now, as we get, we're doing really well on time here. So we'll get to our last question, which is kind of a softball question, but we want to give you the opportunity to answer one of those. If elected, what are some of the unique talents that you will bring to your leadership role as a Multnomah County Commissioner? And of course, our overall theme is solving the homelessness crisis in Portland and Multnomah County. And we'll start with Meghan Moyer for that.
Yeah, I think one of my unique talents is that I'm a policy nerd. That's not necessarily the most exciting talent, but some people get really excited about sports. I get excited about policy, particularly Medicaid. And I love to figure out how to get the federal government to pick up the tab for services. That is what I've done a lot of my career. I helped write our Medicaid long-term care state plan, which it got us an additional 7% federal match, and it became an entitlement for people with disabilities. I've been intimately involved in the design of the Oregon Health Plan under CCOs. I was part of Governor Kitzhaber's healthcare transition team when he came back into office. I work closely with people like Representative Nose around what changes we're going to make. I've advocated for massive changes at CMS related to how we prioritize what conditions we cover. That nerdiness is actually really needed right now, because we need to be able to figure out how to build sustainable systems. I worry very much that the services we're putting in place will be gone in 10 years if we do not figure out a way to sustain those services long term. And we are going to need our federal partners to help us fund that. And so I think it's time for a nerd. I think we need to get in there and do some hard work.
Mr. Mozyrsky.
Yeah, I'm a good listener. And I think that's what we need right now in a commission. People that would listen, understand what the issues are, create good laws and good policies, and make sure that people are represented and their voices are heard. You mentioned I'm the president of the Goose Hollow Neighborhood Association, also a coalition of neighborhood associations. It's up to 29 neighborhoods now. I talk to a lot of people. I'm at the farmers markets, I'm at the street fairs, asking them, what do you feel about our government? What changes would you like to see? If you were in charge, what would you do? And you learn a lot that way. So when I talk about these policies around homelessness and what we can do, it's because I've talked to Ellen Evans at Bybee Lakes. I've talked to Lance Orton at City Teams. I've talked to the executive director of Here Together. And, and that's not just talking. That's not me telling them what I think. It's asking them what they're seeing, what the successes are. How can we grow that success? And that's what I'll do on the county commission. I'll listen. I'll make sure voices are heard. I'll be out in the community, and we'll get things done that way.
Thank you very much. Mr. Adams.
I would say my experience with dealing with very large bureaucracies, almost always well-intentioned, and the budgets that come with them. I have experience and an interest and a passion for what works. And in issues like this, it's what works better than something else often, what does not work, and what's the return on the investment that we're making. So budgets, bureaucracies, taking on big, gnarly, difficult problems, bringing people together and getting real results. That's what I would say I uniquely can bring to this job.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Singleton.
Thank you. I think there's a couple of unique skills that I bring to this. One is I'm a clinically trained social worker who has spent almost 30 years on the front line serving people fleeing domestic violence, serving youth in foster care settings, and understanding that they need better pathways so they don't end up, which 40% of them do, end up homeless as adults. I also am coming with what I like to call facilitating to decisions. While in Governor Brown's office, she deployed me to do things like negotiate the compromise that we got to on the Rose Quarter improvement project. I've been that person who can show up and really help move things forward in a collaborative way. And I think that facilitation work, that ability to really continue to move things forward and not get stuck in process, but also to center the people who are most impacted. When I think about my work and think about the policies that we are implementing, we've got to hear from folks on the front lines, both those who are impacted and receive the services we have, but those who are the workers in our jails that we contract with, and understand what their needs are and how we can better the system to serve this community. I think additionally, I've had just an awesome opportunity in Governor Brown's office to really redevelop what our budget process looked like for the state, and wrote a guide for our state agencies to really fully engage community to better inform what we were budgeting for. I think similar reforms are needed at the county, and I have the experience of doing that at an even larger bureaucracy that I can bring to implement in Multnomah County.
Thank you very much. We have now gotten to the point in this webinar where we are going to closing statements. So you get 1 minute for closing statements, and we are going to do this in the reverse order that we did the opening statements. And so that means that we start with Mr. Mozyrsky. You have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Well, thank you, Ken, for hosting this, and thank you everybody online that's listening. We had about 100 people here, and they're still here, so I very much appreciate the fact that people are listening to what I think is the most important election that's going to happen right now, other than the presidential election. Good luck, Harris. And so I think it's very important that we look at what the issues are here. It's status quo versus change. The status quo has been failing us for years, and we need new ideas, new thoughts. While Ms. Moyer is talking about ineffective pest policies, everything that she supported today are those ineffective pest policies. Boise decision, which even Governor Newsom in California asked to be overturned, she supported today. Allowing people to camp without enforcing camp laws, supported today. More Medicaid money, more time, more policies. That's our failure for the last 10 years. House Bill 4002 deflection, saying I'm nervous about putting people in jail and the risks for them instead of an alternative route. I'm nervous about the 315 people that died in 2002 on our streets, the 123 people that died on overdoses, the 26 people that were murdered on the streets, and then the people that were victimized by some of the individuals on the streets. The gentleman that was riding home who was stabbed by a person with mental illness on the Max track, person who was known but who could have been helped. Instead, we left that person on the street. We need to do better.
Please
and
conclude.
so I will do that for everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Meghan Moyer, closing statement.
I really think that this is a moment in time in which we decide as a community who we are and who we want to be. And I think what drew me to moving to Portland, and I think it drew a lot of people, is that we are a place full of acceptance and compassion. I grew up in Salem, Oregon in the 80s and 90s as a queer kid. And I did not feel like I could be myself. But when I came to Portland, I found a home. I have been married. My wife and I have 2 kids. I've lived in most every part of Portland, and I have loved it at every stage of my life. And I have always felt like this was a deeply caring community. And I don't want to lose that. I do think that we haven't handled this current crisis well. That's why I'm running, because I know that we can do much, much better. But I never want to lose that thing about Portland that makes us so unique and fun, is that we are a place where people can be themselves and that we show love, compassion, and acceptance. Doing that is not unwise. Doing that is not in opposition to evidence-based. Choosing compassion for our neighbor is not failed policy. We have to execute well. We've done a poor job. I'm going to be honest. We've had a total lack of accountability. Totally agree. But it does not mean compassionate approaches don't work. And
Okay,
I don't want to give up on that.
I have to cut you off right there. Thank you very much. Shannon Singleton, your closing statement.
Thank you. And thank you all and all the viewers for watching today, and those who will watch the recording later. Just appreciate the attention to these races. There's a real choice in this race for District 2, and I, like many others, am tired of the finger pointing that has been commonplace in our politics in Portland. I am the type of candidate who can move our county forward. I have the professional, personal, as well as educational experience on the front lines of the issues that the county actually addresses. I know what works, where the gaps are, and how to fill them. I'm the type of leader who can collaborate with people with who I disagree with and focus on the changes that we need to serve our community to find solutions without ego, without disrespect, and without bullying. I know how we can push against the status quo and move our community forward. I'm ready to do that from day one, and I'm ready to do that for District 2 as well as the county as a whole. Thank you.
And thank you. And as we bring this webinar to a close, I want to thank all 4 candidates for Multnomah County Commission.
I didn't get a chance.
And Mr. Adams, I almost did it to you again.
Yes. Incredible, apparently.
Yeah, you take your time and you get your closing statements.
So I'm going to be steely-eyed focused on that upwards of $700 million that's currently being budgeted in a scattershot way. We need a unified houselessness czar that can bring order to the work in the county and between the county and cities and state and home forward. I'm going to make sure that if I will work to get the votes to get support for this in all the jurisdictions, working across the city-county lines. We need to have a houselessness working group, not just one that's advisory, but one that can work with the homelessness czar to make things happen. We need a unified budget. We need a unified care portal so that we only need people experiencing houselessness and some of these other issues only need to sign up once, not 4 to 6 times. And we need a phased in ban on camping so that we're not playing this sort of across 466 square miles of the county. We need to bring people together so that we can provide and connect services with them. And we need an annual independent report card on joint efforts, not these individual siloed efforts, but joint effort. And with these and other ideas, some of which we've talked about here tonight, we can functionally end homelessness in our community. Thank you for putting this together. Those of you that sponsored this, for those of you listening, and thanks, Ken, for facilitating.
Right. And thanks for your patience with me for almost cutting you off twice.
All right.
I appreciate that. I would like to say thank you to all of the candidates who are running. I think it's a real step forward for the community when you decide to take that step to actually represent those of us who live here. So thank all of you for being here. Meghan Moyer, Vadim Mozyrsky, running in District 1 for Multnomah County Commission, Mr. Sam Adams and Shannon Singleton running in District 2. All of you have showed yourself to be quite capable of the positions that you're seeking. So we look forward to seeing what the results are in November, and I'm sure that I'll be speaking with all of you before the election happens. I'd like to thank the District 4 Coalition of Neighborhood Associations for hosting the event, Revitalize Portland, as well as the newly formed Homeless Solutions Coalition, made up of 17 neighborhood, business, and nonprofit organizations who have joined together to find solutions to Portland's most pressing challenge. So thank all of you for being a part of this, and thank you for inviting me to moderate. All of you watching, have a good evening, and thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, everyone.